Hello and welcome to Songs for the Struggling Artist, the blogcast. This is Emily Rainbow Davis. Welcome to this situation. It is episode 426. I am actually recording on podcast night tonight for the first time in 2 weeks because the obligation that I had today was during the day rather than the evening. So, and I can't record during the day here because there is construction that is very loud and is just very challenging to record over in concert with. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, if this is your first time joining me, hello, welcome. The way this works is I will say a few things here, very few, and then I will read you this week's blog, and then I will sing you a song. In the last chunk of blog casts, I've been doing this kind of back and forth between politically based posts and creative based posts. Because I have like a whole glut in reserve, and I feel like I can't live in the political space all that much. I feel like I can do like one of those and then I take a break and then think about, art and then back to the political so I can just clear the decks. Anyway, that it is still going on. This is a creative one. This one is about my trip to the library and about the canon of playwriting in America. I will tell you all about it in the post, which is called The Canon Is Stuck. My library finally reopened post-pandemic, and I went in for a celebratory look around. Though it supposedly had been remodeled, it seemed to look exactly the same. Except now there seemed to be no way to access the card catalog? WTF. I took a look at the theater section because, theater nerd, and I was struck by how much the selection of plays resembled the selection of plays that were in the library when I was growing up. It struck me that the accepted literary canon of theatrical greatness has not really been updated since the 1950s. When I was growing up, the theater section looked like Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams. And today, the theater section looks like mostly Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams. This doesn't mean that theater folk only read Miller and Williams, but I think it does mean that the culture as a whole still only considers Miller and Williams worth keeping in the collection. There may be a scattered edition from a contemporary writer. Maybe if it's a library that's really trying to expand, you'll see some August Wilson or Suzan Lori Parks or an Anna Deavere Smith. My library had an Annie Baker even. But for the most part, in libraries and bookstores across America, the bulk of a theater section will be Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams. Maybe, on some occasions, some Mamet, Albee, Simon, or Durang. But most shelves will be the Miller and Williams collections. I'm curious about this. I was talking with a poet about it because her sense was that poetry had sort of settled on its last canonical figure in the 70s, with John Ashbery, maybe even earlier with W.H. Auden. And contemporary poets continue to have to be in relationship to that old guard. Are we stuck in these places because we don't canonize anymore? Was canonizing artists something we only did when they were all white guys? Do we not make a case for greatness after the 70s or even the 50s? I have nothing against Miller or Williams. They are both incredible playwrights that deserve their place on America's bookshelves. But my concern is that they are alone there. I'm imagining myself as a young person getting into theater now in 2024 and going to the library ready to read all the plays and finding that most of them were written over 3/4 of a century ago. Some of them older. What would I think? And what sort of education would I be receiving from only Miller and Williams? The thing of it is, I live in New York City, and I can get almost any published play I want by going to the Performing Arts Library in Manhattan. I could even buy a lot of plays at the Drama Bookshop, but these places are highly specialized and are really for the theater folk who live here. My local library is for a more general public, and even here, in the theater capital of New York, there's a pretty limited selection. Yes, there were a couple of Tracy Letts plays, and even a Chiara Allegria Hudes, but even so, the bulk of the shelf is the same stuff that was on my local shelf back in the 80s in a small city in Virginia. What can we do to open up our sense of plays for the general public? How do we make sure we don't freeze theater history after Miller? How do we get our libraries to reflect the theater as it is today? I'm genuinely curious. Do we need to actively check out more contemporary plays so that librarians will purchase more to add to their collections? Should we request plays we don't see on our shelves? It's not that I personally want to check out more plays. I want to make more available to the theatrically curious person who might pass by the shelf and just try something. How do we shift this and unfreeze the canon? Librarians, what do you suggest? So far, I have not heard from any librarians. Hopefully, some will turn up. I do have, some possibilities in that arena. I feel like the next time I meet or see a librarian or someone librarian adjacent, I will ask this question. But if you also know a librarian, please do let me know. I'm serious. Like I would do stuff. If there's stuff I can do, I will do it. I don't know that there is, but I feel like there must be, right? I don't know. So I didn't take a picture when I wrote this. So I went to the library and then wrote this thing. And then later I was like, oh, I should take a picture since I wrote that thing. So I did take 2 trips to the library, and I don't think the collection had shifted much between those journeys. But what I hadn't noticed until I posted this blog was how basically the whole Arthur Miller section, it looks like it's all Arthur Miller. And then when I actually looked more closely, it's just the same 2 plays over and over again. So it's just, can you guess which 2 plays they are? I bet you can. They are The Crucible and Death of a Salesman. So it's not like they're even representing Arthur Miller well. Like, he wrote a lot of plays, Arthur Miller. There was, I think, maybe 1 copy of All My Sons. And other than that, it was just The Crucible and Death of a Salesman all the way down. And I have a theory that it's probably because those are the 2 plays that young people study in school. So they have multiple copies of that. So maybe it's that we need schools to teach more plays? I don't know. Weirdly, there was only 1 Raisin in the Sun, I think, if I remember correctly. And that's a play I know they teach in schools, especially in New York City. And there weren't a lot of them. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they were all out. That's it. I don't know. In any case, what song am I going to give you? Well, listen. I struggled with this one. I was like, oh, what are I did not know how to choose. Like, there's not like canon songs. I mean, there absolutely are canon songs. What am I talking about? There are multiple, especially in classical music. There are canonized songs aplenty. But unfortunately, I do not have the skill to cover classical songs for you. Or there's also the Canon song. Again, not really within my wheelhouse. So I thought, okay, what are some songs that are maybe associated with Arthur Miller's plays? Couldn't find a single one. And then I Googled Tennessee Williams and songs, and I thought maybe there's a song in one of these plays that I don't remember, or like songs that people like to play as like pre-show music, or I don't know. I thought maybe I'll find something. And what I found instead was a list of Tennessee Williams' top 10 songs, like his favorite songs. And I found this article absolutely entrancing because, first of all, they seem exactly right. Like most of them are extremely sentimental and kind of dark at the same time. It's in some cases, mostly sentimental. But the thing that really popped out at me was the fact that he had that one of his favorite songs was Elvis Presley, Love Me Tender. And Elvis Presley feels so much later than his work. But of course it is not that much later. The 50s, was like Tennessee Williams' heyday. So it's not crazy, but it's just wild to think of them coexisting in the same moment. And it melted my brain a little bit, and I was interested in that. And he also, on his list, Tennessee Williams, had the Beatles. He had In My Life, like not even early Beatles. In My Life, he had on his list as a song he loved. Again, Tennessee Williams and the Beatles existing in the same pop culture moment kind of blew my mind. And logically, of course, it makes sense. Apparently, Tennessee Williams died in 1983, so he could have watched MTV, Who knows what clubs Tennessee Williams was going to in the 70s in New York City. I would love to hear those stories. Anyway, it shook up my whole brain, which was a good time. So I decided I should do one of those two songs, either the Beatles or Elvis Presley. And I worked on both of them. And it was touch and go until the very last minute here. I messed with both of them and just felt like I had more of a handle on Love Me Tender. So I shall give that to you in just a moment. Meanwhile, thank you so very much for listening. If you like this podcast, please tell someone about it. Like, review, subscribe. If you would like to support it with money, amazing. Patreon.com/Emily R. Davis is the hot spot, but there's also Ko-fi, there's PayPal. All those links are in the show notes. If you became a patron now, before the end of the year, I will still send you this year's perks, which are all the songs that I record for the podcast, and the paper zine that I put together for everybody who wants one. Not everyone wants one, but there's also a digital version of that if you prefer. So if you join before the end of the year, I'll send you this year's zine and music. You could also join Substack as a paid member if you would like to support your artists that way, or if you have a place you prefer to support artists, let me know what it is. I will get on it. Mostly, I thank you so much for listening. It really is quite important to me, and I'm so glad you're here. So, I'm gonna deliver you "Love Me Tender." It's a very short song, so don't I don't know. Don't walk away because you'll miss it. It is a short little number, but it was a good time. So here is Tennessee Williams' favorite song, "Love Me Tender." Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. Love me tender, love me long, take me to your heart, for it's there that I belong, and will never part. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. Love me tender, love me dear, tell me you are mine. I'll be yours through all the years, till the end of time. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling,